Hi, everyone. Welcome to another 2023 FallDocs screening. My name is Armando Zamudio, and I'm the Public Programs and Events Coordinator here at IDA. For our blind and low vision attendees, I'm going to identify myself. I'm a light-skinned Mexican American with messy hair, wearing glasses, a white shirt, a black jacket, and sitting in an office room. Thank you to our media sponsor, KCRW, for sponsoring our 2023 FallDocs. This evening, we'll have a conversation between film journalist Robert Abele and director Vinay Shukla, whose film While We Watched premiered worldwide at the Toronto International Film Festival and winning the Amplify Voices Award. To see more amazing films like this, please visit www.documentary.org/FallDocs. Before we get started, I would like to offer a brief land acknowledgement. We recognize the Gabrielino Tongva as the past, present, and future caretakers of the land, water, and cultural resources in the unceded territory of Los Angeles. Thank you so much to Andrea Lust for ASL interpreting this discussion. And with that, I'll pass it on to Robert. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Abele. I'm a film critic in Los Angeles and a film journalist. And for the blind and vision impaired, I have glasses on. I'm male. I have short brown hair, a beard, and a green top. And I'm here with Vinay Shukla, the director of this lovely movie, While We Watched.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vinay. I am in Goa, where there's a lamp behind me, and I am wearing, I think, some sort of a beige shirt.
Vinay, thanks so much for talking about this movie. This really, just really, I'm a big fan of movies that get into journalism and what journalism is and how hard it is to do and how important it is. And I think the first thing anybody who's seen this movie is going to want to know is what's the status right now with how is Ravish and how is what's NDTV up to these days?
Yeah, thank you for firstly having me. Ravish is right now, he's still powering on. He's now on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. Since the film got over, the channel was then bought out by a very big billionaire in India who has very proximate ties, as per reports, with our current government. So it's a difficult time for news networks in India for sure. Ravish, though, continues to do what he believes in.
I guess, can you talk about how you came upon Ravish as a subject, somebody you wanted to make a movie about, and sure. Did you watch NDTV and all that stuff?
I mean, NDTV, was it was a very staple part of our news habit while I was growing up. The network itself has been around for more than 25 years, but honestly, I had completely stopped watching the news in the last couple of years. And I would speak to my friends and they would tell me that they have stopped watching the news because it's not good for their mental health. And not just in India, across the world. I remember coming across one of Ravish's broadcasts in 2018. And what I was really surprised by was that, very often you find news anchors spending a lot of time praising their audiences, reinforcing their audiences, and saying things like, we are here to serve the audience, and whatever the audience wants, we will give. Ravish, on the other hand, was scolding his audiences. He was telling his audiences that they're not doing enough, that they need to stop watching TV news completely. And even if nobody's watching his broadcast, he'll still do what he wants to do. And I found that to be a little weird and, a little strange that here is somebody on TV who's telling people to stop watching TV. And it seemed like here was a news anchor who was going through something very publicly on TV. He was going through a sort of vulnerable phase of questioning his own relevance And I found that to be an interesting place to start. That, not only is he questioning governments, he's also questioning his audience, and he's also questioning his own relevance. And I wanted to know how people who are working within the news, what is it that they are feeling? What is it that they're going through? And with Ravish, I found a good starting point.
So do you approach him? I mean, how do you earn his trust to be the subject of a documentary?
I mean, I don't think the word trust implies a lot of blind faith. I don't think that I don't think that ever happens, especially between somebody like Ravish, who's very, very media literate, or even within this, NDTV news organization. There is some sort of a leap of faith that both, the filmmaker and the participants usually take in this case, and they hope that it's going to be all right. I remember approaching Ravish and I told him that I'd love to, spend some days around him shooting and try and find out if there is a film here. I was aware of Ravish on TV, but you're never, as a filmmaker, you're never sure if once you begin shooting, if there will be material.
Mm-hmm.
And Ravish was very open to it. He was like, actually, what Ravish did back then was that when I approached him, he told me that you go and speak to the NDTV network, and if they give you permission, then we'll talk. Because he just assumed that I'd never get permission. To NDTV's credit, they gave me permission right away. So I went back to Ravish and I told him that, listen, they don't mind. What do you think? And he's like, what? So I was like, yeah, they are completely on board. So he's like, all right, then let me know what you need. And I remember going on the shoot. And on the first day of my shoot, I saw a cake being cut. And that was such a sort of, bittersweet, tragic moment wherein somebody was leaving the newsroom and you could really feel something within that place. And that's when I knew that there is something happening here, which is, which I can spend time with and excavate and try and build a film around.
That kind of sense of community, all these people are going through, not just Ravish, right?
Yeah, and it's also, and not just that, the thing is, when you see one of your co-travelers leave, it's a very poignant moment. People end up saying things that they don't otherwise. It's a moment of reflection. It's a moment of introspection. It's like when you look, you're at the crossroad and you look back at the way you've traveled and you look ahead at how much you have to, at what lies ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So people end up really speaking and saying things that they wouldn't otherwise. And so when that happened, I suddenly had an entry point into what people were actually feeling. And so, and I was very, very interested. I really wanted to know, what is it that people who are working within the news, what is it that they're feeling? Because over the last couple of years, there has been such a great disinformation campaign against journalists. People, very often when I speak to my friends, or I would speak to family members, and people will be like, I don't care about journalists, I don't care about X person, and I don't care about Y person. So people have gotten very desensitized. And of course, there have been episodes which have eroded people's faith in journalists and journalism. And, there have been certain bad agents. But like I said, there has been a massive disinformation campaign against journalists themselves. And I am really interested in the news. I love newsroom dramas. I love watching the news because whenever, I believe all of us come to the news to learn something and, to figure out how to make better, more informed decisions. So when I realized that people don't care about the news anymore, including myself, I thought that's slightly worrying. So I wanted to find, what is it that people who are working in the news, what are they going through? And with the cake cutting scene, when it happened on the first day, I figured that I have an entry point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like any movies that kind of explain journalism to people, give people a sense of what that world is like, it can only help. It can demystify it for people, and I love that this movie does that. Was there anything that surprised you about the world, that Ravish's world in television journalism? Anything that you came in with a preconceived notion about that you were surprised by?
Oh, I was like, the thing is, I love newsroom films, but the films that I was, used to watching was about sometimes very heroic journalism, sort of people coming together, doing a story, changing the world for the better. People sort of holding a bunch of paper in their hand and saying, we need to do this story today. And, I don't care if the government is coming after me, and that kind of stuff. When I got to this newsroom, I realized that it wasn't so heroic every day. It was journalism and professional ethic very often was in the mundane things, was in the daily ritual, was in the daily process. The most dramatic moments were not with people sort of yelling, but with somebody silently leaving the organization. So I realized that the grammar, the film grammar that I had around newsroom dramas, I had to weave another grammar for the film that I was making, which captured the inner lives of journalists, which captured the inner insecurities of journalists, which helped you understand what they were not saying, how the vulnerability that they were feeling, because a lot of journalists were realizing that journalism is not going to be able to cut it for them. I remember on one of the days somebody was saying that, after 20 years of work, I don't have financial security. I have a fair amount of emotional anxiety, and I don't know if if society at large respects me the way I expected them to when I had started, for having done something for 20 years. So these I knew that I wanted to make a film that reflects all these concerns. I wanted to make uh, a newsroom drama that was almost powered by anxiety. The kind of anxiety that I felt while watching news, I wanted the same kind of anxiety to power this newsroom drama. So I knew that I had to figure out a visual and an edit language to convey that. And that for me was a learning very early on, when I realized that, for example, in today's times, nobody's getting phone calls with breaking stories. That happens on some days, but a lot of times it's just a text message. And you can be like, wait, where did this big moment, go and pass by? And you were like, somebody got a text, somebody texted somebody else, and that made it to the broadcast. So these are small things that, you live and learn every day.
I feel like Ravish's vibrating phone was the soundtrack for the movie. I mean, he's just getting called constantly, and just all the fact that alternative voices are being suppressed in India, and harassment is such a big part of the story, and his willingness to engage with these threatening phone calls. I mean, like, talk to these people was really fascinating. Were you nervous? I mean, filming those scenes?
You can imagine that you're watching like a 1.5 minute, 2 minute scene in the film. I shot it for about 4 hours, right? On one evening. So when you are there for like the first 15, 20 minutes, you're excited and you're capturing material, etc. Like if you see the film is shot very up close and personal with Ravish, right? So when we started filming, I realized that the news had been framing him in mids his entire life. So when I was shooting with somebody who was already known so widely, I had to almost shoot Ravish anew so that people would find a new perspective to him. So we have shot the film very, very close, very tight close-ups continuously. It's like you're always looking at Ravish, you're always looking at his eyes, you're always looking at people's faces, their expressions, and seeing or getting a glimpse of what is it that they're going through. So with that scene wherein Ravish is getting a lot of calls, if you see the camera, it's floating all around him, right? And you can see that Ravish he's struggling with how to respond to this onslaught. He's trying to engage with them. He's getting angry at some people. He's threatening some people. At one point, he acts like the police is in the room. Then at one point, he starts to trying to make them sing along with him.
The sing along.
Yeah, and when you're shooting, you're wondering, is this a sanity slippage moment? Is my character now crossing over to the other side? And as a documentary filmmaker, you're very, whenever you're stuck in these places, you wonder what is the right thing to do. For example, on that day, told myself that I am going to shoot and decide later what I need to do. Because, I believe there's something happening and I just need to continue sort of going with it. But these are also the days, wherein you understand what trolling means.
Mm-hmm.
Over a period of time, the word trolling itself has also lost its shine, right? It's become normalized. It's become widely accepted in society. But when you see it play out in the lives of people in the sort of invasive, intrusive manner, which clearly has consequences on people's emotional lives, that's when you understand what is it that our journalists and people in public life are going through, and how we need to do more for them and protect them.
Yeah, you certainly U.S. News audiences here are very familiar with the dynamic that Ravish is worried about in the film. The outrage media, the screaming debate segments, that where real issues aren't even covered, but what we see in your film, I mean, some of those other anchors are just full of hatred, and it's not even hidden, and over here, I mean, anchors kind of like hide it, and they know how to foster it in the audience, but they don't do it themselves. But those guys are just screaming. And from your understanding, how did it get that way?
It's quite worrying, to be honest. There are many things in India that we can be very proud of, like Ravish says very often, but you cannot be proud of the Indian news media in today's times. It's unfortunate that the systems that are designed to keep to ensure that there is a healthy news ecosphere in India is currently lacking. We Of course, you can blame the tabloidization of news, but that doesn't begin to capture what we are in right now. There is a fair amount of the weaponization of news that has happened, and the normalization around it, which is what is rather worrying. I keep in India, for example, when we are showing the film, at limited private screenings, and even when Indians are watching it, it's all of us. We It happened right before us. It's not like we didn't see this coming, we didn't see this happening. A lot of my friends, when they watch the film, they say, we knew this was happening, but to see it all together, it's a very hard shakedown. And I'm hoping that as more and more people watch the film, people understand how fundamental and vital it is to have healthy systems in place. This film is for sure around Ravish and around NDTV, but if we keep thinking or keep believing that one person, one Ravish or one NDTV or one journalist will be able to sort of make everything all right, do journalism right, then sooner than later we'll be disappointed. It's absolutely and fundamentally important that we have systems in place that allows for more and better journalists than Ravish to come forward. Like, for example, what is it that we're doing for more women journalists to come forward and thrive? What is it that we're doing so that more people from marginalized communities can come forward and thrive? The better systems that we have of checks and balances and opportunities, the richer a news ecosphere we'd have.
Well, one of the things that's so interesting is you can, when Ravish goes out to talk to people in the run up to the election, and you can see in real, in the faces of people what, the fact that they've been taught to hate something more than they've been taught to want something better for themselves. And there's that young guy that he interviews when he's touring the country, and the guy says, "How can I get a job if I have no country?" And I'm thinking, like, what better answer could Modi hope for? Where unemployment is not the problem, it's somebody else. It's traitors or anti-nationalists and stuff. That was just kind of a scary moment.
I mean, and that it's not just, you have to remember that gives you an insight into just the massive impact that mass messaging has via the news. Various governments over a period of time will always you find this conflict playing out with every elections, with every election across different countries, wherein there'll be some people who will be with the government, some people against the government, so on and so forth. But this sort of the theater of, or the spectacle of revenge that has been brought about by the news, and especially Indian news, which is constantly encouraging people to take revenge against whoever it is that is the target for the day, is really worrying, because it's been happening. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to
Go
ask
ahead.
you, did you make this movie like secretly because of that atmosphere?
I mean, I keep a low profile, but I keep a low profile in general. So, so I would, it's just easier to do the work that I'm doing with a lower profile.
What were the biggest challenges then in getting this movie made?
Well, financing, getting the right crew. It's pretty difficult in where I come from to be also, how do I put it? There more people will tell you to not make a film like this than encourage you to make one. So it becomes every day and every shoot is a resolve. You are going out every day and you're making the film that you want to make because you really want to make it. There's a couple of people who will be your friends, who will make things easy for you, who will work with you, who will raise you money. But on most days, you're working against all forces out there.
And then Ravish himself, I mean, he's clearly a very strong-willed person. He's going to do what he wants. Does he also, did you have conversations where he would tell you how he thought the film should be? Or does he,
I'm honestly, Ravish was like, I'm sorry, in case you're getting some, it's raining here. So I'm sorry if you're getting the rain audio. I didn't. So yeah. With Ravish was too busy. Like Ravish is doing a 40-minute broadcast every day. So he would on most days not even be able to fathom what is it that I'm up to, that I was shooting for 2 years and then editing for another 2 years. Like, because it's not something that he is remotely, what do you say, close to, neither the process nor the outcome. And with him, all his thing, I mean, all that he cared was that don't come in my way and I won't come in yours. Also, I think what has happened over the years is that he's been attacked so much by so many people that you also become a little like he was like, far too many people have attacked me already. I don't know what is it that you will have that will unsettle me.
Vinay, you mentioned that you've shown the movie privately in India. Is there a plan for it to be released? And what have the responses been that when you've shown it?
I mean, so the film premiered last year at the Toronto International Film Festival. It won there. It won at Busan. It won at a bunch of other film festivals, and then we were able to take it to. The film came out at in New York at the IFC Center in July. On the same day as Barbie and Oppenheimer. We surprisingly for everybody, the film ran there for a month. John Oliver did our opening Q&A. Amy Goodman was there. The film released across the UK. So I have only seen a lot of success internationally, and I was hoping that all of this international success would help me bring the film home in India, and somebody would come and pick it up. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. It's been difficult, to put it very simply. There have been no takers for the film in terms of institutions in India. I have received a lot of love whenever I've screened the film for people. People find it to be a difficult watch, but inspiring nonetheless, because it's a story that all of us know is playing around us. But you feel like on a lot of days you feel like you're not in control of it. So, and that, I think, it's a difficult story to uh, to to be told to. Uh, so it's been difficult to. I haven't been able to find distribution in India yet, but I remain optimistic. I am an optimistic person. Things are difficult, but I believe in just coasting along, coasting on, doing whatever I need to do every day. And I'm sure sooner than later I should be able to get this film out widely in India.
I mean, it seems like it could easily contribute to the conversation around the election next year.
For sure, and not just in India, even in the US. That's one of the reasons why the film has had a lot of resonance across the United States as well, because we are all concerned about how is it the role of TV news within our information ecosphere, within our election ecosphere, and we are all very aware of the challenges that it's facing. For example, a lot of the malpractices that we have, we borrowed it from first world countries, and now we're in the process of making it worse and shipping it back to you. So it's we are all very, very aware of how easily these practices mutate across borders. And that's why I find it also exciting that we are all learning from each other. It's an important time. The film was broadcast on POV earlier this month, and it's had some staggering amount of it's had a good turnout so far. I'm really hoping that we are able to sort of just continue discussing how to build better systems for our journalists, and how is it that we can make things better for them.
What do you hope people here in America take away from this portrait of this honest reporter, this voice for the voiceless, who's facing a dangerous time?
I think it's important that we understand that what's happening in India sooner than later will happen across the world. So if there is, firstly, I think, the first step really lies with sensitization. We have gotten too desensitized to the crisis that journalists are facing across the world. For example, the writers' strike that's happening right now, that's finally has been resolved. One, because the writers were fighting back against how AI is taking away agency, and so many other sort of layers there. But AI is coming for journalism too. It already has. You're going to be having the finest op-eds being written by people who you've never heard of soon enough.
Mhm.
And as election cycle comes around, and as in the years ahead, and that's just one example of the battle that journalists and journalism has to fight on various frontiers. I am hoping that people understand and pay attention to the good fight. There are people amongst us, there are some fantastic journalists amongst us who are doing some incredible work. And it is for them that we have to try and build a more sustainable journalism, a more welcoming journalism for them, if nothing else, because we need them. Society needs them. All of us need the news to be able to make better, more informed decisions. I could go into so many things that need to be done. For example, in India, we are living in a world of complex problems. Migration is a complex problem. Climate change is a complex problem. Left-wing bias versus the right-wing bias, complex problem. The pandemic is a complex problem. But our newsrooms are simply not training journalists in complexity. Just because people who work for the same organization, we assume that they have access to the same resources. No, they don't. All of us come from vast information inequality, and it's the job of newsrooms. For example, we lived for 2 years in a pandemic. I can count the number of newsrooms on my fingertips who trained their journalists in pandemic reporting.
Mm.
So it's absolutely fundamentally vital that we invest ourselves in the long run in sort of building a better journalism, because that's the only way we'll have long-term solutions to where we are.
Well, I think for sure, Vinay, you've contributed to everybody's understanding of better journalism with While We Watched, and I thank you very much for showing us these insights into the making of the movie and what you want out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. This has been fantastic. And thank you to the audiences who've seen the film. It means a
Yes.
lot to me.
Yes. And thank you, IDA, for another great part of the screening series. And we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.